Good evening. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Newport News School Board for Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. On behalf of the members of the school board and the superintendent, I welcome each of you present and watching. A quorum is present to transact the business of the school division. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an unprecedented effect on all of us. We are adapting to this new temporary way of life, and the school board is adapting as well. Personal barriers are installed between the members of the board, and our staff and visitors are socially distanced in the auditorium in compliance with the governor's orders. This evening, the school board will hear several presentations. Some of our presenters will join us in person, and others will join us virtually. We are taking these steps to ensure the health and well-being of our staff and the public. We value and appreciate your partnership. We will begin tonight's meeting with the invocation and pledge of the flag. Here to do the honors is Mrs. Lou Maynard, President of the Newport News Council of PTAs. Ms. Maynard.
Good evening, Chair Brown, Dr. Parker, and school board members. Thank you all for having me this evening. I would like to share a quote from one of our former leaders. Keep exploring, keep dreaming, keep asking why. Don't settle for what you already know. Never stop believing in the power of your ideas, your imagination, your hard work to change the world. We don't ask you to believe in our ability to change, rather we ask you to believe in yours. At this time, I ask you to stand so we can start the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, thank you, Mrs. Maynard. The next item on tonight's agenda is school board recognitions. And so, Dr. Parker, do we have some recognitions tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we have 3 recognitions, and we'll get started with those. VSBA Academy Awards, State Business and Industry Partnerships Award, and the VSBA Media Honor Roll. To do that, Ms. Price will come forward. And Ms. Price, do you need us to come down to the floor? Yes.
Good evening. On behalf of the school board and the superintendent, I am pleased to present this month's recognitions. The Virginia Department of Education's Creating Excellence Awards promote best practices in education and recognize exemplary contributions that improve the quality of career and technical education programs by preparing students for successful transitions to post-secondary education and training and careers. And they create partnerships with businesses that support CTE programs and enhance Virginia's workforce and economy. This evening, we're proud to recognize that one of Newport News Public Schools' longtime dedicated partners has earned well-deserved recognition. The partnership between Bayport Credit Union and Newport News Public Schools Career and Technical Education Program earned the top Business and Industry Partnership Award in the region, and then went on to win the top award in the state. Joining us this evening to celebrate this award-winning partnership is Chris Moore, Financial Education Supervisor and IT Support Engineer at Bayport Credit Union. Ms. Moore, would you please come forward? Also joining us this evening is Tonette Outland, Career and Technical Education Supervisor for Newport News Public Schools. Ms. Outland. This award-winning partnership enhances personal finance education with student-run credit unions in 10 schools, including Denby, Heritage, and Woodside High Schools, Crittenden, Dozier, and Hines Middle Schools, and Carver, Kiln Creek, Lee Hall, and Saunders Elementary Schools. The Bayport and Newport News Public Schools partnership offers financial services to students and staff at school. In addition, the program gives its student staff hands-on marketable career skills. In fact, several student tellers have been hired for full-time positions with Bayport. These model financial institutions prepare student members to conduct basic banking transactions and show them the value of saving. These activities support the objectives of the Career and Technical Education course in Personal Finance and are an important part of the school system's efforts to prepare students to be college, career, and citizen ready. Congratulations to Bayport and Newport News Public Schools CTE Department. Congratulations. Thank you. Again, congratulations. Training and development are top priorities for the Newport News School Board. As part of its collective effort to maintain effective leadership, the board has participated in numerous development programs, conferences, and workshops through the Virginia School Boards Association and the National School Boards Association. Our school board members have received their own awards for their dedication to advancing their expertise from the Virginia School Boards Association. The VSBA Academy provides training in effective leadership and governance to school board members and superintendents. Each year, VSBA recognizes board members for their dedication to improving their skills through conferences on leadership, school laws, strategic planning, and legislative issues. Each of the persons being recognized this evening has received a certificate from VSBA. These awards honor their participation in the Academy's programs for the past 2 years. Chairman Douglas Brown earned the Award of Distinction. Vice Chairman Lisa Searles Law and board members Terry Best and Superintendent Dr. George Parker earned the Award of Honor. Board members Gary Hunter and John Ely earned the Award of Excellence. And Marvin Harris, board member Marvin Harris, earned Award of Recognition. As a new school board member, Mrs. Rebecca Amon will be eligible for recognition next year. Our Award of Distinction honoree, our chairman, Mr. Brown, will be recognized during a special session during the VSBA annual convention. Each of these dedicated public servants have received award certificates and distinctive lapel pins symbolizing their commitment to effective school board governance through participation in the Academy. On behalf of the students, staff, and citizens of Newport News, we thank you for your dedication and leadership of this school division and congratulate you on your awards. So congratulations to each of you. Thank you, and again, congratulations. We will have another recognition a little later in the agenda. At this time, though, we'll take about a 5-minute break so that our honorees and guests may leave if they choose to do so. During this time, our school board audience will have an opportunity to view this month's School Board Spotlight. So we'll stand in recess for about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Took about a good
Virtual learning is a new experience for all of us. While teachers are working hard to create an inviting virtual environment for all students, families can create a dedicated learning environment at home for children to succeed academically. Newport News Public Schools doesn't expect parents or caretakers to become teachers, but families can effectively create a functioning learning space at home for students to focus, participate, and thrive through online learning. First, choose a location free of distractions. Turn the TV off, put the family pet in another room, and place the smartphone out of reach to help create a quiet, clutter-free area for your young scholar to learn. Before students log into their class, make sure they have the necessary learning supplies available. If your students need to eat a meal or snack, make sure they do that between classes. During independent learning, students need the same distraction-free environment to complete their daily work. By effectively reducing distractions and creating a comfortable learning space, all students can succeed during virtual learning. In the past 6 years, countless numbers of students and some adults have received more than 14,000 free books from Books on Bikes Newport News. Teams of educators at 4 elementary schools spent their summer break pedaling around town with free books and popsicles to motivate students to keep reading over the summer months. Each week, educators from Discovery STEM Academy, Epps, Greenwood, and McIntosh Elementary Schools log the miles to personally deliver brand new books and cool treats to students in their school zones. For safety among the global pandemic, the writers wore face masks, and each kid scrubbed in with hand sanitizer before browsing the wide range of grade-appropriate reading materials. With many interactions taking place virtually these days, the weekly bike rides to neighborhoods was a delight for students and teachers and helped keep lines of communication strong between schools and families. Near the end of summer, Books on Bikes Newport News held their own back-to-school supply drive and collected enough supplies and monetary donations to assist several schools. Books on Bikes also took the opportunity to pass out school supplies during their rides in late August to help more students prepare for virtual learning. Books on Bikes is funded by the generosity of local businesses, individuals, and school PTAs, along with constant support from the City of Newport News, who contributed $5,000 this summer to boost children's literacy and community outreach. And with Books on Bikes expanding to additional schools and neighborhoods this year, even more students can experience the joy of reading at home. This year, Newport News Public Schools received recognition for exceeding state accreditation standards, narrowing achievement gaps, and increasing academic options for all students. Through innovative practices and dedicated work in classrooms, Newport News Public Schools earned 6 Virginia Board of Education Exemplar Performance School Awards for achievements made during the 2018 to 2019 school year. NNPS was one of only 6 districts across the Commonwealth receiving the 2020 Board of Education Innovative Practice Award for STEM instruction delivered through engineering design challenges. By teaming up with business partners, the NNPS Instructional STEM Department presents creative and fun challenges for student teams to solve real-world problems. Marshall Early Learning Center, Discovery STEM Academy, and Denby High Schools have made huge gains over the years, earning the 2020 Continuous Improvement Award. These schools were recognized for increasing their assessment scores and completion rates, while also decreasing chronic absenteeism and dropout rates. And for the second year in a row, Deer Park and General Stanford Elementary were among 71 schools statewide to receive the 2020 Highest Achievement Award. This recognition is based on high levels of success across state assessments and narrowing achievement gaps for students. By continually making improvements and offering a range of learning options, Newport News Public Schools is making progress as an award-winning school system where all students have access to academic success. Newport News Public Schools provides outstanding visual and performing arts programs for all students. For 5 consecutive years, NNPS has been recognized by the National Association of Music Merchants as one of the best communities for music education in the country. And every year, visual arts students receive recognition and numerous awards for their creative works of art. Through the collective efforts of educators, parents, and community partners, Students in Newport News receive crucial developmental skills through a diverse art curriculum. Improved self-discipline, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity skills are all associated with art education. Furthermore, students who engage in long-term study of the arts score higher on standardized tests and demonstrate greater achievement levels in math, science, and language studies. In pre-kindergarten and elementary classes, students are encouraged to explore self-expression through the arts while learning techniques and developing arts literacy. Students collaborate to create their own school productions and explore music at a higher level with the Virginia Symphony at the Ferguson Center for the Arts. In our middle and high schools, students participate in a variety of advanced visual arts classes, including traditional media, digital, and virtual. In the performing arts, students learn theater, stagecraft, and dance, while music departments offer band, orchestra, chorus, and guitar instruction. Students across grade levels showcase their talents through marching band performances, community concerts, seasonal themed recitals, show choir escapades, and collaborative pyramid concerts, all while receiving numerous superior ratings at state assessments. With support from community partners and local art institutes, students in Newport News have access to unique learning opportunities only found at Hampton Roads. For decades now, Summer Institute for the Arts has offered students an intensive 6-week summer program in music, visual arts, drama, or dance. Summer Institute is the state's only school-based summer arts program that offers students an honors-weighted high school elective credit. By fully realizing the importance of art education in developing our youth, educators in Newport News Public Schools effectively harness the power of art so students may reach their fullest potential.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed this month's School Board Spotlight. Special thanks again to Bayport Credit Union, one of our longtime dedicated partners. As Mrs. Price indicated, we will have 2 additional recognitions later on in our agenda. During our regular meetings, we provide time for the public to address the board. These opportunities are scheduled in the early part of our agenda and also towards the end of the meeting. The school board recognizes that during the pandemic, some members of the public may not be able to join us in person. As advertised, citizens may submit comments via a web form, email, or voicemail up to 30 minutes prior to our meeting time to be included in our official meeting record. For those of you joining us in person, the board considers this an opportunity to listen to your comments. Please understand that we will consider your concerns and get back with you at a later time. We ask you to comply with our 3-minute time limit. As you begin your comments, a green light will come on. A yellow light signals that you have about 30 seconds remaining, and a red light and a beep means your time is up, and we ask you to end your comments at that time. As your name is called, please come forward. At this time, I believe I have 1 card. Miss Mary Voss.
Hello, my name is Mary Voss. I'm an NNPS teacher and parent, a Newport News Education Association member, and a Newport News Educators United member. We are continuing to advocate in Red for Ed for a very slow, very cautious, very safe return to in-person instruction only when it's safe to do so. That allows immunocompromised staff and also staff who care for immunocompromised family members to continue to teach virtually. While it's true that locally, some majority white districts like Virginia Beach, Yorktown, and Gloucester have rushed back to in-person learning, please keep in mind that African American and Latinx populations are at 5 times greater risk of having severe life-threatening cases of COVID. And the CDC reports that almost all of the American children and teens who've died from the coronavirus are Black or Hispanic. Therefore, it's wise for diverse school districts to slow down their reopening plans in order to protect the health of their students, families, staff, and teachers. If board members are worried about NNPS losing per pupil state funding because of declining student enrollment during the pandemic, rest assured that the Virginia General Assembly voted to delay reforecasting Virginia's state to locality appropriations due to COVID-related enrollment drop-off. With lobbying from the VEA and VEU, I believe it's very likely that we can continue to convince the General Assembly to keep postponing the reforecasting of state to locality appropriations. I would be happy to spearhead such an effort, and I could reach out to my contacts in VEA and VEU leadership for support. So please don't feel like you need to rush reopening just to get more per pupil state funding. The decision to reopen should be about the safety of students, teachers, staff, and families, not about per pupil state funding. Also, some decline in enrollment may be a new normal during COVID as more families opt to homeschool their children. It would be a shame if NNPS rushed back to in-person learning in order to try to improve school enrollment, only for the inevitable COVID outbreaks that occurred to lead to even higher rates of homeschooling during the pandemic. And just imagine the chaos and hysteria that will result when COVID outbreaks occur in reopened schools, and teachers and staff are afraid to go to work, and parents are afraid to send their children to school. Hampton is taking a wait-and-see approach, monitoring data instead of rushing to send students back. They are also using 3 public health indicators to monitor when it's safe to go back, and since 2 of those 3 indicators are currently unsafe, they're waiting. Newport News' current Return to Learn plan has 2 public health indicators, and one of those indicators, new cases per 100,000 in the last 14 days, was already at higher risk of COVID transmission in schools, according to the CDC, when the school board voted on October 6th. So on October 6th, Newport News had 80 new COVID cases per 100,000. Today on October 20th, we have 135 new COVID cases per 100,000, getting closer and closer to that red zone. So please, we appreciate y'all taking a pause, and please continue to take student, staff, teacher, and family safety into account. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Voss. Are there any additional cards? Are there any more cards? Well, no cards at this time. We do have some additional recognitions that are going to take place in this section of the meeting, but in the interest of that time, we'll go ahead and move forward to item number 3 on our board meeting and come back if need be when our guests arrive. So now moving on to section 3, which is this consent agenda, which includes 3.01 minutes from the regular meeting on September 15th, 2020, 3.02 minutes from our work session on September 15th, 2020, and 3.03 minutes from our public hearing on September 8th, 2020. 3.04 financial reports, including the revenue report for September 2020, the expense report for September 2020, and the child nutrition services report for September 2020. Item 3.05 personnel report. Item 3.06 budget transfer, and 3.07 appointment of agent of the school board. So those items in your consent agenda. At this time, can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
All right. Thank you. We have a first. Is there a second on the motion? Thank you, Mr. Ely. All right. Any questions on the consent agenda? There being none, Ms. Moore-Buffalo, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
4.
Mr. Ely?
4.
Mr. Harris?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
4.
Mrs. Searles Law?
4.
Dr. Best?
4.
Mrs. Amon?
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
So this time, that will take us to our action items. We have our first action item, which is on the agenda, is 4.01, Procedures Rules of Order. Dr. Parker?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think at the last board meeting, we had brought forward a procedure that the board was amenable to consider changing this evening, and I think we had Mrs. Brooks provide that information. Do you want to expand on that, or does the board need any clarification on that?
So I'll just ask at this time, board members, is there any questions or clarification on the rules procedure that you saw at the last board meeting?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Hunter.
Mr. Chairman, I believe, just for clarity, I believe the only thing that's changing is that the chairman, we rotate the last names every meeting, and that now that the chairperson would vote last at all during every vote. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Hunter.
That's correct. That being the case, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the procedure rules as stated presented last week, at our last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Dr. Best. All right, any further question or discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Brown.
4.
Mr. Ely. Mr. Harris.
4.
Mr. Hunter.
4.
Mrs. Searles Law.
4.
Dr. Best.
4.
Mrs. Amon.
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, so there's one other action item, item 4.02 in our agenda tonight, which is the proposed capital improvement plan budget for FY 2022 through 2026. And Dr. Parker, any comments here?
Thank you. Could my staff pulled up the CIP presentation to slide 12 on that presentation? And just for the community, I wanted to put the actual budget on the screen just for our viewing public. Mr. Chairman, at the last board meeting, the board heard a presentation by Mrs. Mary Lou Rousseau, the Assistant Superintendent, regarding the 2022 FY 2026 proposed capital improvement plan. As we're well aware, in many years, we've submitted a 5-year budget to the City Council for consideration, to the City Manager for consideration in their city's capital improvement budget. And we know that the city usually considers the first year of our plan, but we also forecast any impending expenses related to major capital needs moving forward. The budget that was submitted to the board at the last board meeting included the construction costs for Huntington Middle School, as well as some capital projects such as HVAC replacements, roof replacements, paving, ceiling replacements, and other capital needs. The total for the first year, FY 22, of that plan was $71 million, which included the cost of the construction of Huntington, and then subsequent years were in the range of $19 to $25 million for those extended costs. We still left the cost of a building addition for Riverside Elementary in year 2024. Based on that building currently being at over 100% capacity. We know there are other things we want to look at with Riverside, but right now, just looking at the student enrollment and the portables that are on the exterior of that building, that renovation is still included in this plan. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I recommend to the board, ask for your approval of the FY 22 through 2026 capital improvement plan for submission to our city manager upon board approval.
Board members, are there any questions about the superintendent's recommended budget? All right. Seeing no questions, we have a motion at this time to approve the superintendent's recommended budget.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the FY 2022-26 proposed capital budget presented by our superintendent.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
I believe I heard the second from Mr. Ely. All right. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Brown.
4.
Mr. Ely.
4.
Mr. Harris.
4.
Mr. Hunter.
4.
Mrs. Searles Law.
4.
Dr. Best.
4.
Mrs. Amon.
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. With that, that takes us to item 5 on our agenda, which is our reports for the evening. And I'll just pause here for a moment and ask if our dignitaries arrived. Okay, so we'll go forward with our first report item, which is item 5.01. It's an update on Return to Learn. Dr. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Every month we provide an update on our Return to Learn planning and just general update to the board on how our students and our staff are doing. So this evening we have a report for you in the areas of teaching and learning. We also have spent the week doing some focused meetings. We'd like to share some data from you regarding our focus groups from the past week, as well as some information regarding athletic participation. As you're aware, the Virginia High School League has put a schedule out which has winter sports beginning in December. So in preparation of that, Mr. Nichols is here today to provide the board with information as far as how we want to provide access in a safe way to our student athletes to begin preparing for their winter sports season. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Manglamont to give the board an update on instruction.
Good
Good evening, Chairman Brown, Vice Chair Searles Law, members of the board, and Dr. Parker. Today it's my pleasure to provide for you an instructional update that are timely for tonight's meeting. We're going to take a look at updates on elementary instruction and, of course, some specialized instructional updates for English learners and for our students with disabilities. And then I'm going to round out the presentation with a look at our work surrounding teacher opportunities for professional learning. As you know, during the first weeks of school, we implemented a modified schedule, which included pausing social studies and science instruction. This temporary pause allowed our teachers, our families, and our students to get used to the virtual remote learning environment, gave them an opportunity to learn a little bit about the navigation of Canvas and other technology tools for virtual learning. Last week, both synchronous and synchronous science and social studies instruction continued for grades 3 through 5, and this week we continued instruction for grades K through 2. Now, while we paused that instruction, it's important to know that we provided this opportunity for our teachers K through 5 to learn about a new division resource, and that resource is called Discovery Education Experience. And it's an online platform filled with over 200,000 resources for teachers that include video, audio files, images, text, and interactives for our students. Teachers can embed this content easily in their Canvas classroom content. It also provides teachers with easy-to-use digital lesson plans, unique collaboration tools, and other professional learning resources. All resources within the platform are aligned to Virginia Standards of Learning and are curated and segmented by grade level for easy searchability. Besides this resource, we are partnering with lots of local partners to develop virtual field trip opportunities for students in science and social studies. This week, our 3rd and 5th graders began virtual field trips to the Mariners Museum. Some of our 5th grade classes have already begun virtual field trips with Jefferson Lab. 2nd and 4th grade teachers are receiving information for virtual field trip opportunities for Jamestown and Yorktown. And our 1st and 3rd grade teachers will receive information on virtual field trip opportunities for the Virginia Living Museum come November. I'd also like to highlight that this year, the Newport News Fire Department is expanding their partnership with us, and they're developing virtual field trip opportunities that are aligned to various career fields. Final details are being completed, and they're going to be shared with teachers in the next few weeks. The last we spoke, we were eager to begin in-person instruction, and one of the reasons we were eager to do that was because of the VKRP mathematics assessment. After our decision was made to stay fully remote during that testing window, our team reached out to the state, and we are thankful to VDOE to have provided all districts that are staying fully remote to exempt all students from that exam. Newport News has opted to take this exemption for this year. Now, while we're taking this exemption, we know that math diagnostic tools are extremely vital to inform teaching and learning of mathematics. So our teachers will utilize what are called just-in-time quick checks provided by VDOE Mathematics Department for all kindergarten math strands beginning in Q2, and they will continue throughout the rest of the year. These quick checks are formal assessments created and are aligned specifically to the 2016 Mathematics Standards of Learning. In kindergarten, these assessments are designed to assist in planning instruction, to fill potential gaps to assess students' understanding, and they're also going to be providing guidance for teachers regarding what to do with students when they're not successful at their grade at a given task. We are also sharing the preschool math foundational blocks with teachers and interventionists so they can scaffold their instruction to ensure that they fill the gaps that exist for kindergarten students. Now, when we pause moving forward with our timeline for in-person instruction, our teams came together to ensure that our special populations continue to receive the services and supports necessary to ensure success in the virtual environment. Some of the supports we are providing to our English learners are both student and family focused. All of our Level 1 newcomers will receive synchronous instruction in language, literacy, content, and math 4 days a week, with additional small group support on Wednesdays. All other English learners will receive intentional language instruction in small groups throughout the week that aligns with the language of the content. We are very thankful for our partnership with CNU as they are providing our secondary students with additional tutoring throughout the week. To support our families, I'm happy to say that we have visited over 123 homes to support our families using technology, parent view, and registration. We have given over 115 initial screenings at the Welcome Center to determine the eligibility and placement of ESL services. From the end of August until now, we have provided over 2,300 phone interpreting calls for families that speak a language other than English, and this adds up to about 29,844 minutes. And just recently, we are expanding services to include teleconferencing interpretation via Zoom. Just as we regrouped with our ESL teams, to analyze our virtual supports, we are providing students and families the same thing through special education. We have approached it through a three-tiered approach. For our teachers, we are communicating expectation and practices for social distancing in a variety of settings: self-contained, resource, push-in, and pull-out. We are providing protocols for students with significant need for increased physical interaction, and we're providing professional development to provide specially designed instruction within the hybrid model. Our students are being prepped on the routines and practices necessary to return to in-person instruction. This includes hand washing, how do you wear a mask, and how do you physically distance. Students are also being provided materials to support instruction, along with training on understanding the hybrid model, what does it mean for them, and what are the expectations for their learning. We've had lots of parent chats, and we will continue parent webinars. Informational communication continues to go out, and we're helping our parents understand what is the hybrid model and what are those expectations for learning. Lastly, as teachers continue working in the virtual environment, professional development is our strategic priority. There continue to be various opportunities made available to support learning and growth of our teachers. Supports are both ongoing and specialized in nature. All elementary and secondary teachers engage in ongoing professional development on Wednesdays. We follow an alternating schedule to ensure that our building leaders can provide building professional learning, and division-wide professional learning takes place as well. The ongoing learning is focused on division initiatives and curriculum implementation, including new programs adopted to support our virtual instruction. All PD that we give is differentiated based on content and grade level. Some recent PD topics included social emotional learning, beginning the conversation on hybrid learning, and administering assessments remotely. Finally, ongoing learning continues around our Canvas learning management system. As we approach the end of the first quarter, we will host optional Q&A sessions on Canvas. Teachers who have a question to clarify or want to know more about advanced systems will be able to join a session to engage directly with a Canvas rep. On the other side, we have specialized focus PD that we're providing to staff division, where we're providing all staff division access to a self-paced asynchronous course that's called Getting Started with Blended and Online Learning. The course provides practical strategies to support student learning in virtual and hybrid settings. Openings for participation were made available to all our building leaders, our instructional technology coaches, our reading specialists, and teachers at each grade level. Finally, as a division, we are capitalizing on this learning by hosting a series of Newport News Twitter chats on virtual and blended learning. While participants in blended learning course are encouraged to attend, the chats are open to all so that we can share best practices and ideas across the division. Our first chat will be this Thursday, October 22nd at 7 p.m., and the series will run bi-weekly through January. So to bring my presentation to a close, we want to invite our board members to join us in our first NNPS Twitter chat as we engage our teachers in topics surrounding the pedagogy of online and blended instruction. All you have to do is click on the Twitter link, and then in the search box, just type hashtag NNPS chat and let the conversation lead you forward. Are there any questions or anything you need clarification on?
Any questions at this time? Board members will be providing written questions to the superintendent after following this meeting. So in the interest of time, we're going to move to our next report item unless there's more on return to learn.
Yes, sir. We have two other presenters. One is on the Dr. Gerald to give you an update on the focus group meetings that took place last week. I think you'll be pleased to hear the happenings that were going on and the feedback and interaction with our staff and our parents. And then Mr. Nichols will update us on athletics, and that will conclude the return to learn portion of the presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, Board Chair Brown, Vice Chair Soros Law, Dr. Parker, and our NMPS community. Today, I will share with you the results of our stakeholder focus groups and provide an update on our status with family intent selection. Our focus group feedback and parent guardian intent data will inform our next steps and are critical to ensuring we are meeting the needs of our school community. On September 6th, I didn't took us back to September. On October 6th, we shared that focus groups will begin on October the 8th. And today, I'm happy to provide you with an overview of this process and information gathered that will be used to inform our work moving forward. But before we get into the themes and data, we would like to share with you, the school board and our school community, our timeline for developing and implementing focus groups. Through the collaborative efforts of our Human Resources Department, Community Relations Team, and Assessment Teams, a focus group plan was submitted in mid-September for approval. Upon plan approval, recommendations for facilitators and participants were collected electronically from school and division leaders. The participant recommendation form included selecting the names of 2 parents, 2 teachers, 2 students, and 2 support staff members from each school. These team members were encouraged to provide honest feedback regarding our plan. Our next step was to reach out to our facilitators and co-facilitators, providing them with training related to facilitating focus groups and best practices to answer questions and run the meetings. Our participant notifications were distributed during the week of October 5th, and we began our focus groups on October the 12th. Our purpose was to gather feedback on our plan for gradual return to in-person instruction, seek stakeholder advice on ways to build confidence in our plan, and better understand virtual learning experiences across our school division. This work would not be possible without the support of our focus group planning team, Michelle Price, Tracy Brooks, Nina Farish, and Joseph Ellis. Thank you for your time and willingness to collaborate. I would like to also send a huge thank you to the Equity Assessment and Strategic Operations team and all of our facilitators and co-facilitators. Thank you for everything you did to make this work possible for us. Overall, we were able to host 13 focus groups for 115 participants who represented a balanced sample from the Central, North, and South districts. To ensure opportunities for open dialogues, groups were kept to no more than 10 members, with the exception of our instructional supervisors and our parent focus group, which I'll talk about in just a minute. During each 60-minute session, facilitators provided scripted questions, while our co-facilitators took notes on key ideas that surfaced during the discussion. Teams worked to create a comfortable environment for open sharing, and participants were assured the sessions were not recorded, no personal identifiable information was captured in writing, and facilitators were not in a direct line of supervision of any of the staff members who participated. Before I move forward, I would like to spend a moment sharing with you the unique opportunity provided in our parent focus group. On Wednesday, October 14th, I had the pleasure of facilitating a 90-minute parent guardian focus group for 21 parents. Our session participants were pleasantly surprised with a greeting and opening from Dr. Parker. After the opening, members of our division leadership team, including Mrs. Russell, Dr. Bird, Dr. Barnett, Dr. Herman, Dr. Mangelmont, and Mr. Wright, slipped into the role of silent observer as the 60-minute conversation took place. With 20 minutes remaining in our scheduled meeting time, our division leaders jumped at the opportunity to answer questions. Parents expressed their gratitude to share their thoughts and recommendations with the team, not only verbally, but in the Zoom chat and the emails in the days to follow. On the same day, Maria Henriquez, NMPS school social worker, hosted a Spanish language parent focus group earlier in the day. The key ideas and recommendations from this group were translated to English and are also represented in my report this evening. So I know you're really wanting to see the results of our work, so let's dig in. First, we asked participants to share their initial thoughts on the timeline proposed on October 6th. The feedback that participants shared that the timeline proposed was too quick, did not provide enough time between phases to adjust our work, and did not provide enough time to plan a transition to in-person instruction. Examples provided by participants included the time required to shift from teaching virtually to teaching instruction, possible changes in teachers, and time to adjust childcare arrangements. Our conversations were not limited to just concerns. Participants willingly shared ideas to support our plan work moving forward. As you can see, the recommendations to return our recommendations were to return to in-person instruction during second marking period was a consistent theme. Participants also recommended the expansion of the time between phase return to allow for plan adjustments and to provide time for our teams to prepare to welcome our students back into our classrooms. We next asked participants to share their feelings about the plan presented and provide us with any useful advice in building stakeholder confidence in our work. Our stakeholders shared that clear communication with specific health and safety guidelines is important to building confidence. Stakeholders also shared that they did not feel as if they were involved in the development process as they would like. The advice provided is truly valuable. In the recommendations, they provided examples such as videos, division-wide handbooks, and multiple opportunities to provide input as common threads. Most notably, one of our students suggested, you need to go to a school where they're back already and see how it's going, learn from their mistakes. Our conversations rounded out with participants sharing their experiences with virtual learning thus far. Groups highlighted the hard work of our teachers who are meeting with families in the evenings and on the weekends to ensure everyone has the support they need. They also shared their experiences and challenges with multiple Zoom meetings throughout the day for elementary learners. Our staff felt that instructional time has increased while planning time feels like it has decreased. And our students shared a desire for interaction via Zoom that extends beyond the instructional model. Recommendations of flexible office hours were consistent across all groups. Parents recommended continuing to gather input on the virtual learning model for elementary students, and our staff recommended reviewing instructional schedules for asynchronous learning days. Students highly recommend that we allow opportunities for interaction beyond academics to include virtual pep rallies and clubs and activities during the school day. Our building leaders are responsible for putting our plans into action. On Monday, October 12th, all principals were sent with a 2-question survey that asked their preference regarding the October 6th timeline presented and their comfort level with phased student grouping. 100% of principals recommended keeping the return to in-person instruction during the second marking period, and 65% of principals indicated they felt uncomfortable with the proposed timeline grouping. Upon further analysis of the open-ended comments, principals shared the sentiment that directly aligns with our focus group themes. Stakeholder feedback is important to our work. As we move forward in our planning, we will continue to use focus groups that are purposeful around specific aspects of our plan and rely on the expertise of our teams to ensure we meet the needs of our family. Though stakeholder feedback is critical to our work, we must also take into consideration the number of families who have selected to return for in-person instruction and those who are choosing to remain 100% virtual for the entire first semester. As of today, we're happy to report that we met our goal of 80% response rate by Friday, October 16th. And as of today, this information was updated yesterday, we have an 87% response rate. This would not be possible without the consistent effort of our building leaders, clerical staff, school counseling teams, case managers, family engagement specialists, and a host of other team members who have worked tirelessly to ensure we have the response from every family. We've also provided intent count and percentages by school. As you can see, 58% of our families have chosen to remain virtual for the duration of the first semester, while 42% of our families are choosing to return to in-person instruction. This information will be used to continue planning for the safest possible return for our community. Though our response rate is at 87% today, this indicates that we still do not have intent responses from 13% of our families. 13% represents 3,546 students we are unable to plan for at this time. Data used for planning purposes will assist in finalizing this work. During our parent focus group, the sentiment arose that families did not feel comfortable making a choice based on the information provided. In order to develop and communicate a plan for returning to in-person instruction to our community that accurately reflects the expected scope of our work as a school division, we need each family to make a choice based on their intent with the information provided. We realize these decisions may not be easy for our families and feel quite permanent in the time that changes from day to day. NNPS is committed to providing our families with the flexibility necessary to navigate the months ahead. The Parent Guardian Intent Form will remain open in Parent View until October the 23rd. At this time, I would like to pause and turn the presentation back over to Dr. Parker, and I will remain at the dais to answer any questions from the board.
Well, Dr. Parker, as I understand, our honorees have arrived at this time, so between this presentation and the next, we'll go back to that item 2 on our agenda for our recognitions.
Thank you. And if any board members have any questions for Dr. Gerald, you can submit those if you'd like. For the sake of time, I'll be happy to share those with her, and we'll report it electronically, share that information with the entire board.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and Mr. Chairman, after the recognition of our honorees tonight, we will have Mr. Nichols with athletics to close out the presentation. So, Michelle, come on down. Okay.
Oh, I see it.
Good evening again. As we shared with you earlier, we have one additional recognition. Each year, the Virginia School Boards Association, or VSBA, recognizes media organizations and reporters for providing valuable information to the community about public schools. The Media Honor Roll recognizes representatives who provide balanced and accurate information. Media representatives are nominated for this recognition by the local school board and are named to the Media Honor Roll by the Virginia School Boards Association. This evening, on behalf of the school board, we are pleased to recognize 2 2020 school board inductees. Please join me in welcoming Janet Roach, an anchor and reporter at WVEC. Please come forward. And we'd also like to recognize Nico Clemens, a reporter at WVEC. Mr. Clemens? Mrs. Roach and Mr. Clemens are named in a special resolution signed by each member of the school board, which names them to the 2020 Media Honor Roll. It reads, whereas in each community, the public schools are shaped by the community to provide the most appropriate and effective education for school children who attend those schools. And whereas public schools are dependent on the community's support in countless ways, including support in setting goals for the education of children, in establishing successful volunteer and booster programs at the school, for annual funding of operations, and in the selection of qualified school board members. And whereas much of the community's knowledge and opinions about public schools rely on responsible reporting by local media representatives who decide which news to share with the community, how much attention will be focused on various issues, and what the tone of the reporting will be. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the City of Newport News names Nico Clemens and Janet Roach on the statewide Virginia School Boards Association Media Honor Roll, calling attention to the ongoing responsible and exemplary nature of reporting on this community's public schools. We express our appreciation for your balanced and accurate approach to sharing with this community both the challenges facing our schools and the success achieved by students and teachers. Your work has aided this community in focusing on the goal of providing the best public schools we can for our children who attend them. And again, it was signed by all members of the school board. Let me say that these dedicated media professionals have covered numerous stories about Newport News Public Schools. Mrs. Roach has covered several different topics, including a series of reports on dyslexia disorders that actually led to public school reform at the state level. And Mr. Clemens, particularly in the last few weeks, has covered everything from virtual learning to Chromebook giveaways to our Meals to Go service. So on behalf of the Newport News Public Schools School Board and Newport News Public Schools, we thank you and we congratulate you for being named to the 2020 Media Honor Roll.
Oh, we going down?
Yeah.
We coming down? Okay.
Sure, we will.
Thank you.
Just peek out to the back.
And then someone will come forward. Jordan, this side, please. Let Jordan see where you are. Thank you. Yeah, you come right. Come right.
Can you see me?
Switch with him and see him. Mrs. Lisa Keeper. And then Dr. Parker, you go out just a hair. Mr. Harris, please. Let's see. Mr. Hunter, go that way, please. Mr. Ely, go that way. Okay. Dr. Best, go that way. Mr. Brown, that way. Right there. Okay, gotcha. Don't blow.
Again, we congratulate our two inductees into the 2020 Media Honor Roll by the VSBA. And as our board gets settled, again, we congratulate and we thank you. And momentarily, I will turn the meeting back over to our chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Price. And Dr. Parker, we have one more section of the 5.01 Return to Learn report.
Yes, sir. I think Mr. Nichols will give the background regarding the Virginia High School League sports and athletics, and give the board an update on how we plan to prepare our student athletes for the season, which will begin in December. So, Mr. Nichols, the podium is yours.
Okay. Chairman Brown, Vice Chair Searles Law, school board, Dr. Parker, Tonight, I'm here to provide you with information concerning the school division's return to play plan, which is a part of the overall return to learn plan. And tonight, I will discuss the phases of implementation, the mitigation strategies that we will implement and that we are implementing at this time, and also the athletic timeline that we have developed for return to play. On July 27th, the Virginia High School League voted to move forward with Model 3, which is before you, in its reopening of sports and activities for the 2020-2021 school year. Model 3, it delays the start of the Virginia High School League sports and activities season until December 7th, and it also adopts a condensed plan. The condensed plan means that all sports will play 60% of their typical schedule. For instance, football typically plays 10 football games, but this year they will only have 6 regular season games. Basketball typically has 22 basketball games, but this year they will only play 14, and so forth for all of the other sports as well. And as you can see, the first season will start with the winter sports, and that is scheduled to begin on December the 7th. The second season, fall, which typically begins in August, is scheduled to begin on February the 4th, and the third season, which is the spring, is scheduled to begin on April 12th. Also, the academic activities that you see listed before you, they will also start in December, and they will carry on throughout the remainder of the school year. So in preparation for these athletic seasons, the National Federation of State High Schools and their Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, in collaboration with the Virginia High School League and also various other health departments, they developed guidelines to a 3-phase approach to allow for out-of-season conditioning and the eventual return to play. And next, I will show you the guidelines that have been adopted by the Virginia High School League. As you can see, in phase 1, which we ended the season with back in March, no athletics or no activities were allowed at all. But after that point, phase 2 and phase 3 guidelines were developed, and that's what we are to follow at this point if we are to return to out-of-season conditioning or competition. If we start with phase 2, as we are proposing, the Virginia High School League has typical guidelines of no more than 10 individuals allowed inside of the school building, and that is for athletes and for coaches as well. A maximum of 50 athletes or 50 individuals are allowed to gather outside in a group, but they have to have social distancing of a minimum of 10 feet. And even though they may be able to have up to 50 individuals outside, they will all be conducted in pods of no more than 5 to 10 students, along with one individual coach that will rotate through with them to minimize risk. Athletic equipment, if it's decided to be used, has to be cleaned after each use. And face coverings also have to be used. And that means that all coaches, all athletic directors, all trainers, anyone who is out there on that field has to have some type of face covering. It's required. And also student athletes, once they are out there for conditioning, they have to have face coverings before they compete, after they condition, and anytime during the activity, if they would like, they can also wear face coverings at that time. And also, they can't share any equipment. They can't share water, they can't share towels, they can't share shoes, or anything of that nature. They have to have all of their own individual gear. And as you can see, phase 3 pretty much follows the same procedures as phase 2. However, indoor facility use is available for the teams in phase 3. And also, you can see that the social distancing requirements has been reduced from 10 feet to 6 feet. But during both of these phases, student athletes and they can use the equipment, but it must be cleaned after each individual use. If allowed, phase 2 will be the phase that Newport News Public Schools will be initially will be asking for out-of-season conditioning. But we have added some additional mitigation strategies in that the only sports teams that will be allowed out initially will be winter sports only. And they will only be allowed outside. They will not be allowed to come inside of the building. And also additional mitigation strategies are that no additional athletic equipment will be used initially. So we just want to make sure that our plan, that we start slow and we start to make sure that everyone understands that everyone follows the mitigation strategy so we can reduce risk as much as possible. And also, no additional athletic equipment will be allowed to be used, so no bats, no balls, or anything of that nature once we initially start with out-of-season conditioning. Also, each head coach must submit a practice plan to the athletic director, and it must be approved by the school's administration before they can begin. And the practice plan would include things such as when they will be practiced. And practice has to be held Monday through Thursday, and they can practice a maximum of 2 days per week and a maximum of 90 minutes for each session. Also, as part of the practice plan, they will include the athletic check-in procedures to include who will be contained in each pod. They will have to talk about the enter and exit strategies for each training area. And also, they will have to talk about the mitigation guidelines. And like I said before, the mitigation guidelines would include everyone must wear a face mask. They can't share water or any of those things just to reduce risk. Also, it will be, they will know that all student trainers, coaches, and anyone who is out on that field must provide their own PPE. But at the same time, our athletic department has provided each school site with masks, with gloves, with touchless hand sanitizer, with face masks. So just some things in order to get them started. Just in case during the conditioning process, a mask happens to break or someone happens to leave one at home, we do have PPE available for them so that they condition. Also, a part of this plan, we also have included a symptom checker provided by the National Federation of High Schools, and that's to assist coaches, parents, and athletes and trainers with proper screening questions when students actually do come. And we actually have also provided a student questionnaire that each student athlete is to complete prior to coming to school for their conditioning. And this packet also contains Newport News Athletic Department's an assumption of liability waiver as it relates to COVID-19 and the coronavirus. And this document outlines the increased risk that may be associated with participating in athletics, and it must be signed before any student athlete is allowed to start conditioning. And so in preparation for a tentative start date of Monday, October 26th for out-of-season conditioning, our athletics department has implemented a timeline to assist student athletes in getting their physicals, because we've had 2 physical dates, one on July 28th and another on August 18th. We've also had a Zoom call with a number of 100 of our coaches where we explain the mitigation strategies and procedures that were necessary for out-of-season conditioning to begin. And like I said, I have these dates before you. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Nichols. That was very informative, and school board members will be able to submit questions in writing to the superintendent following this report. And so if there's nothing further, Dr. Parker, we're going to move to item 5.02,
Yes, sir.
which is the report on new and revised policies and procedures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll have Mrs. Brooks come up for that report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Parker. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to share with you 11 new and revised policies and procedures. As you know, one of the major roles of the school board is to set the policy direction for the school division, and we do this through the Policy Review Committee. So on the committee this year, we're very fortunate to have 2 board members, Dr. Best and Mrs. Amon, and we also have a principal from each level serving on the committee, administrators from the Departments of Teaching and Learning and the Office of School Leadership, a teacher, our 2 attorneys, and then myself as the policy administrator. During the policy review process, the department leads or senior staff members present their new and revised policies and procedures to the committee. After our discussion and review, we hold a public comment period and may incorporate the input received in the policy drafts that are before you this evening, which is step 8 of the policy review process. So this evening, I would like to share our new and revised policies and procedures in two groups. First are those that are required by state law, state and federal legislation, and as most of you are aware, we typically begin each policy year by revising our current policies or developing new ones to ensure that we meet the new mandates. Second are the policies that we are developing to support best practices in the school division, particularly as we begin the first year of implementing our strategic plan. Now, there are 8 policies and procedures resulting from recent legislation, and they address a wide range of areas, from revisions to the school division statement of non-discrimination, to a new requirement for mental health awareness training, to new provisions for our students in foster care. So I'll take a moment to briefly speak to each of these. Our first revision this evening is to the School Division Statement of Non-Discrimination for our programs, our activities, and employment practices to align it with the state code and federal law. The statement is placed, as you know, on our publications, on our website, and on our employment notices and applications. So in addition to the categories of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, age, marital status, or disability in our current non-discrimination statement, we will expand it to include the categories you see here: pregnancy, childbirth or related medical conditions, sexual orientation, gender identity, and status as a veteran. A couple of years ago, the school board approved a policy to allow electronic meetings from remote locations when the governor has declared a state of emergency, which happened this past spring. So for each electronic meeting, the state is now requiring school divisions to post approved minutes within 3 working days of the board's approval. So we're adding that language to reflect this practice, which is already in place in our school division. We're also removing the requirement to submit an annual written report about our electronic meetings to the Virginia Freedom of Information Advisory Council, since it no longer applies to school divisions, only to state public bodies. Next are school safety drills. We are proposing a new policy that incorporates the school division's current practices regarding fire drills, lockdowns, school bus safety drills, and tornado drills. It's based on the Virginia School Boards Association policy and incorporates 2 new requirements, which are to provide notice to parents before a school conducts a lockdown drill, and it exempts pre-K and kindergarten students from participating in lockdown drills during the first 60 days of schools, but requires them to participate in a lockdown drill after the first 60 days of each semester. The next new policy requires teachers and other full-time staff, as determined by the superintendent, to receive mental health awareness training at least once. So under the state code, the instruction may be provided by a behavior health authority, a certified trainer, or through an online module. We're fortunate to have certified trainers on staff who are developing an online training module that will be provided to our school faculties and to our employee groups. Whenever a training is conducted, a licensed clinical social worker, a student support specialist, or a school psychologist will be present to answer questions or to provide additional information. Also, the school division recently received a federal grant to fund additional mental health awareness training, which Dr. Parker will talk to you about later during his comments this meeting. This next new policy reflects the state requirement to notify parents anytime a student undergoes literacy or response to intervention screening and services, or when a student does not meet benchmark on assessments used to determine at-risk learners or learners in need of additional instructional supports. Now, for issues regarding compulsory attendance, the school division has always followed the state code. Now the VSBA is recommending that we have a policy aligned to state law that addresses the minimum and maximum ages that a student must be enrolled in or attend public school or an equivalent educational program allowed by state law. This new policy also includes requirements for students who attend alternative education programs. Next, we are revising our admission of resident students policy to allow students in foster care to continue to attend their same school even after they are placed in another city, so that they will have a continuity of instruction. The new state provision also permits students in foster care at the age of 18 to stay in their school until they turn 22 years old to complete their requirements for a credential. The last policy mandated by state law requires school divisions to inform coaches and parents about the identification and handling of symptoms that may lead to sudden cardiac arrest in student athletes based on state guidelines that are currently being developed. The National Federation of High Schools is also developing a module to provide information to educate our coaches, our athletes, and their parents on the nature and risks of sudden cardiac arrest. Once our school division's guidelines are in place, parents will review the information annually and then acknowledge receipt. Now, our next group of policies that I will be sharing with you are not required by law, but work to support best practices in the school division. And Michelle, if you will advance, I will go through these just very briefly. The first are revisions to the retention component of our current policy and procedures on promotion, retention, and acceleration of students. And some of this work was shared with you at a September school board workshop that focused on the school division's retention philosophy and the work of the Retention Review Committee. And as you see, we share several of the points here for your review at your convenience. The next two policies reflect new programs that will be developed and implemented in upcoming months. The first is on new program proposal and approval, which establishes an approval process for new instructional programs. And our next policy is on program evaluation, which establishes a systematic approach to evaluating new and existing instructional programs. So the PowerPoint here has several bullets about each of those programs to read at your convenience. So in terms of our next steps, the new and revised policies will come before you at your September 17th meeting, and once approved, the new and revised policies and procedures will be posted on our school division websites and disseminated to our schools and our public libraries. So this concludes my report this evening. I realize I was very brief, but I'll be happy to answer your questions or to note your suggestions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board members, we do have time for one question each. We do have another presentation, 5.03, which will be fairly lengthy, so in the interest of time, we could limit to one question each. Is there any questions? Okay. No questions at this time. We will take this matter up at our November meeting for vote. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, that moves us on to item 5.03, our student discipline update. Dr. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This presentation is an annual presentation that's provided to the board and the community regarding our disciplinary data update. And every year we have addressed the issue of disproportionality in our division and wanted to share with the board and the community how we are progressing in that area. So two presenters, Mr. Ellis and Mr. Ransom, will present this presentation together, and welcome this evening.
Good evening, Chairman Brown, Vice Chairman Searles Law, members of the board, and Dr. Parker. This evening, I'm happy to present you with an update to our ongoing conversation surrounding year-end discipline data. My name is Joseph Ellis, Supervisor of Local Assessments, and I will lead you through a look at some of our key discipline metrics this evening. I am joined by Mr. Jerron Ransom, Supervisor of Youth Development, who will detail some of the work we continue to engage in to improve our practices and keep students in the classroom. During tonight's update, we will take you through a summary of the 2019-2020 discipline data, making key comparisons to the 2018-2019 data we presented last year. We will highlight our glows and grows, speaking to last year's achievements and the work that lies ahead. We will reflect on our actions during the 2019-2020 school year and lay out how we will continue advancing the importance of equitable disciplinary practices. While Mr. Ransom and I are providing you with this discipline data for the third consecutive year, we have worked to align this year's update with the spirit of Journey 2025, centering the focus of disciplinary practices on student academic success, social, emotional, and physical well-being, and equitable outcomes will lay the foundation for our work moving forward. We've provided you with a copy of this presentation with space for notes, so you may jot down questions or comments along the way. At the conclusion of the update, we will be happy to answer your questions and address your concerns. Before we begin to look at our discipline data, I'd like to speak to the importance of how data is used in the context of making meaningful improvements to our students' daily experiences. All too often, data is used as a hammer to drive the nails of state and federal accountability, creating a gap between the theory and practice of data-informed decision-making. We should do our best to avoid this practice, instead using data as a tool of discovery. To that end, data plays two roles. Data can be a spotlight, highlighting achievements resulting from improvements in practice and a commitment to accountability. In this way, data is celebratory, validating our hard work and reinforcing the necessity of our efforts. On the other hand, data can be a flashlight, illuminating our surroundings and allowing us to see things we may have overlooked. Our eyes may be able to adjust in the dark, but our vision is always better in the light. In this way, data is formative, providing us with a guiding light towards meaningful change. To perform all the necessary calculations and conduct the analysis presented in this update, we use raw data gathered from three sources. The Virginia Department of Education Fall Membership Report provides all demographic data, such as ethnicity, gender, and special education status. This data is collected each year at the end of September and provides a constant enrollment snapshot for determining disproportionality and other metrics requiring a comparison against our student population. The Virginia Department of Education Discipline, Crime, and Violence Report provides a record of discipline incidents resulting in a student being removed from instruction. This includes in-school suspensions, short and long-term out-of-school suspensions, and expulsions. All information related to removal from instruction is determined using this report. Finally, the Newport News Public Schools Student Information System, Synergy, is our system of record and houses all student discipline data. All calculations regarding incidents, infractions, and suspension days are derived from data extracted from Synergy. Like almost everything else in our current reality, tonight's discipline update is directly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Due to Governor Northam's executive orders effectively closing schools after March 13th, we do not have a full year's worth of discipline data for the 2019-2020 school year. Students stopped receiving in-person instruction after the 119th day of school, so we do not have any discipline data to report beyond that time. In order to provide you with an accurate comparison of the discipline data to the 2018-2019 school year, all discipline data recorded after March 20th, 2019 was removed from the dataset used for analysis. By doing so, we are presenting a comparison of equal time periods over the last 2 years. To begin our look at the key discipline metrics, we will start with a division summary of incidents, students involved, infractions, and removals from instruction. The total number of discipline incidents represents the number of referrals entered into the student information system. During the 2019-2020 school year, we saw an increase in the number of incidents reported. This continues the increase in reporting noted last year during the discipline update and was expected. We have made a consistent effort to encourage teachers and administrators to utilize Synergy as opposed to in-house means of recording discipline data, such as paper forms or Google Documents. The number of students involved is the count of students receiving a disciplinary referral acted on by a school administrator. Students are only counted once, regardless of the number of referrals they may have received during the year. Similar to what we see with the number of incidents, we see an increase in the number of students being referred to school administration. While we don't like to report increases in these discipline metrics, it is worth pointing out that 80% of Newport News students, or 4 out of 5, were not involved in any reported disciplinary action. The total number of infractions represents all the rule violations listed on the referrals submitted through Synergy. Again, we see an increase in the number of reported infractions during the 2019-2020 school year. However, the increase in infractions is proportional to the increase in incidents, so the rate at which rule violations were reported did not increase. Finally, the number of removals from instruction reports the number of infractions that ultimately result in students being removed from class or school and missing instructional time. As we see here, although there is an increase in the amount of discipline reported in 2019-2020, there is a decrease in removals from instruction. We are now well below the 50% mark, reinforcing the commitment our teachers and administrators have made to changing our discipline practices. Now that we've seen a summary of the overarching discipline metrics, let's dig a little deeper to explore how discipline affects some of our subgroup populations differently. First, we examine the percentage of students involved in discipline incidents disaggregated by ethnicity. Here, we see the ethnic distribution of the student population during the 2019-2020 school year. Now, we overlay the ethnic distribution of students involved in discipline incidents, comparing the two. This visual leads me to reach for my data flashlight, looking to find answers to questions such as, what is the underlying cause of the disproportionality we see in this data point? What professional development can we provide to staff? And what additional supports can we provide to students? Continuing on to our male and female students, we see the gender distribution of the student population during the 2019-2020 school year. Again, we overlay the gender distribution of students involved in discipline incidents to compare the two. This visual also has me reaching for my data flashlight. I'm searching for the specific behaviors that contribute to male students' overrepresentation and which ways in which we can better engage male students to keep them focused on their academic success. Finally, we examine how discipline affects our population of students with disabilities. As before, we first see the distribution of special education and general education students. Then we overlay the distribution of students involved in discipline incidents once again. This data point gives me an opportunity to switch on the data spotlight, showcasing the continued decrease in disproportionality for students with disabilities. During the 2019-2020 school year, this disproportionality decreased by 9.3%. Spotlights are wonderful tools for showcasing achievements, but they can also draw our attention away from other important details. With that in mind, I want to keep my data flashlight handy to search for the means to ensure this progress continues. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Ransom to speak to the ways in which we continue to address these disparities.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. As you can see, there is still work to be done. We are focusing our lens around equitable disciplinary practices by being open to change. We are changing systems to better support students with challenging behaviors, changing our practices so that due process does not become labored. And we are changing the code of conduct to reflect the growth in perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Ransom, for detailing how we are continuing to address the overrepresentation of certain subgroups seen in the distribution of students involved in discipline incidents. Continuing our data summary, let's take a closer look at removals from instruction. Recall that we saw the overall reduction earlier in the update, but here we will dig into the subgroups once again. First, we have the percentage of infractions resulting in a removal from instruction disaggregated by ethnicity from the 2018-2019 school year. Now we compare that to the percentage of removals from instruction for the 2019-2020 school year. This is another great opportunity to switch on the data spotlight, showcasing the fact that during the 2019-2020 school year, removals from instruction decreased for each ethnic group. Additionally, the likelihood that a black student was removed from instruction decreased by 6.6%. Moving along to the disaggregation by gender. First, let's again look at the removals from instruction for 2018-2019. Now, we compare that to the percentage of removals from instruction for the 2019-2020 school year. As you can see, there is a decrease for both male and female students. We keep the data spotlight switched on here, again showcasing the decrease in removals from instruction for male and female students. We can also highlight the 6% decrease in the likelihood that a male student was removed from instruction. We will round out our look at removals from instruction by disaggregating the data for students with disabilities. Looking to the removals from instruction for 2018-2019, we see that students with disabilities were above 50%. Now we compare that to the percentage of removals from instruction for the 2019-2020 school year, and we see a decrease for both students with disabilities and general education students. Our data spotlight is shining brightly here. Once again, we see the same downward movement in the percentage of infractions resulting in a removal from instruction for both special education and general education students. We also see a decrease of 7.1% in the likelihood of a student with disabilities being removed from instruction. But the brightest spot of all is that we are now below the 50% mark with removals from instruction for special education students. Committing to keeping these students in the classroom is a vital aspect of ensuring their academic success. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Ransom to speak about the efforts that have led to these great results.
Thank you again, Mr. Ellis. It is important to note how these changes were realized. Continued emphasis on Tier 1 practices engages all learners. Empowering administrators to be creative and compassionate with students leads to better outcomes. Some accommodations for students were already in place. These simply needed to be followed with fidelity, and therefore, we supported a system of accountability to ensure that that occurred.
Thank you again, Mr. Ransom, for detailing some of the important work that took place last year to help us achieve the decreases in removals from instruction. The logical place to close out our discipline data update is with the average length of suspensions. We've looked at the students involved in discipline incidents and how likely they are to be suspended, begging the question of how much instructional time they miss when they do receive a suspension. We see here that when students are assigned an in-school suspension, the length of suspension is generally consistent across the ethnic groups and between the 2 school years under comparison. Further, we see the same level of consistency when students are assigned an out-of-school suspension, especially for the ethnic groups that represent the majority of NNPS students. We can definitely shine our data spotlight on the fact that a student's ethnicity is not a determining factor in the length of time they are removed from instruction. We can also use our data flashlight to search for additional opportunities to utilize interventions to keep students in the classroom. When we disaggregate the average length of suspensions by gender, we see that male and female students tend to receive an equal number of days when assigned an in-school suspension. However, when averaging out-of-school suspension days, we see that female students tend to serve slightly longer suspensions than their male peers. This presents an opportunity to utilize our data flashlight once again to search for the underlying cause of the disparity in suspension days for female students and use our findings to determine how we can equip our staff to support female students before a suspension is assigned. Once again, we conclude our look at this discipline metric by disaggregating the data for students with disabilities. We see that students with disabilities and general education students tend to receive an equal number of days when assigned an in-school suspension. We also continue to see the same theme with out-of-school suspensions that we presented in our previous discipline update, that students with disabilities are, on average, given shorter suspensions. As I mentioned earlier, instructional time is crucial to ensure the academic success of our students with disabilities. This fact is most definitely a data spotlight, as it speaks directly to the equity mindset that has been part of our work to improve disciplinary practices over the last few years. During last year's discipline update, we noted that the percentage of students receiving multiple suspensions was a metric we would closely monitor moving forward. To assess the effectiveness of our increased awareness, as well as the effectiveness of any additional supports provided to students, we categorize them as receiving a single suspension or 2 or more suspensions. This categorization allows us to examine the suspension recidivism rate, answering the question, what percentage of students that are suspended receive additional suspensions throughout the school year? As you can see here, the number of students receiving 2 or more suspensions decreased in 2019-2020, thus reducing the recidivism rate to just under 40%. Once again, we can roll out our data spotlight. The 1,303 students that received multiple suspensions last year represent just 4.8% of the overall student population. In other words, 19 out of 20 students are either never suspended or only suspended once. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Ransom to talk about our glows and grows, reflect on the energy and enthusiasm around this work, and outline our next steps.
thank you, Mr. Ellis, for your continued support around this important work. There are areas that we continue to take pride in and other ways in which the division seeks to improve. A standout glow is the lower recidivism rate for suspensions. This aligns to our perspective that discipline is instruction. We will continue to grow in our approach to the disproportionality facing Black and male students. Despite the unique circumstances of the 1920 school year, our team made a thorough review of the 18-19 discipline data, which we shared with you last fall. We continue training to better understand the data. The Student Discipline Task Force the Student Discipline Task Force made its recommendations to the board. And the division continued its expanded progress monitoring as it relates to the Virginia tiered systems of support. Let's just pause right here and feel the glow from the spotlight. As a reminder, data can be a spotlight highlighting success and structures that are working. We are celebrating the decrease in disproportionality and shorter suspensions for students with disabilities, the decrease in removals along multiple student groups, that ethnicity is not a factor in suspension length, and the reduction in suspension recidivism. The adjustment to virtual learning has allowed for a clear evaluation of disproportionality along 4 areas. Ensuring the focus on ethnicity in student discipline is woven in the Journey 2025 strategic plan, aligning our words and actions through an equity lens. Commit to a closer look of disproportionality with regards to Black and male students, and strengthen professional best practices around challenging student behaviors. And that concludes our analysis of student discipline for the 2019-2020 school year. At this time, we would be happy to answer any question you may have.
All right. Board members, any questions at this time? Yes, Dr. Best.
I have a question. Regarding the female students, I made a note when you were on slide 9, and then you answered the question a little further about the they received more days for suspension. You answered that a little later. There is some data out now that talks about African American females receiving longer time for suspension, which we saw reflected in ours, but it also talks about because many times they have harsher offenses. Is that what you're seeing here? And then have you been able to disaggregate the data a little bit more to see like who, what, and where, or are you looking at that?
Yeah, that's part of the next steps. Is that we've identified that point in the data with our data flashlight. So the next step is to dig into that deeper to really look at what are the rule violations that are leading to the extended suspension length for African American females. Just diving deeper into it to really figure out what's going on there so that we can address it properly.
And I have one more.
Sure.
As far as professional development, can you elaborate a little bit more what teachers and those right with the kids are?
Sure. So one of the big recommendations that we had out of the Student Discipline Task Force was to implement culturally responsive practices. So not just with regard to curriculum, but discipline can be encompassed in that as well. So I don't know, Mr. Ransom, if you want to speak a little bit more to that.
No, that's exactly right. No, he's correct.
Okay.
I'm just
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think I have one.
Yes, Ms. Roselaw.
So are our children behaving during virtual learning? Do we have any offenses?
I have that right here in front of me, ready to
Okay.
go. So right before we walked in, I'm thankful to have a smartphone that I can pull up Synergy on and look at our discipline data anywhere I want. We currently have 19 incidents in Synergy. We have 3 students that have been suspended, but that's where we're at right now.
Okay.
Discipline being put into the system. So things do look different in the virtual environment, yes.
Okay.
But I think teachers are probably doing a great job with managing those Zoom sessions and working with kids to make sure that they're on task in the virtual environment.
Well, thank you.
All right. Yes, Ms. Amon.
Just going back up to some of the earlier slides, maybe you may know more of the historical data than I do. But looking at the summary of, what is this, slide 7? It appears that for reducing by 2.2% the number of, say, in-school or out-of-school suspensions, we about doubled the increase in incidents, the number of students involved as well as the number of infractions. We upped by about 0.5%, 5.2%, 5.6%. Is that to be expected going forward if we're going to change the discipline procedures or approaches to see that kind of an increase in response overall? Has that been historical? Was that a similar change in past years when we were or were not adopting this approach? Just seems to be a bit.
Are you referring to the 5.5% increase?
It seems like our incidents went up double the percentage of the amount we pulled back on discipline. Which one could contend that maybe it's making some situations less safe, but what are the facts behind that?
Sure. So one thing that we really focused on, as I mentioned, was, I think this was 2 years ago, with one of Dr. Parker's big objectives was, everything needs to go in Synergy. We have to know what's happening. So, we can't rely on paper forms in the teacher's lounge or a Google form here or there that schools are keeping kind of close to the vest so that we're not receiving that information. And part of the reason we need to know that is so that we understand all of the interventions that are taking place before a student gets suspended. And that's helpful for us here to understand what's happening out in the buildings. It's also helpful for building administrators when that student does come to the principal's office and they have all of that information to know what the teacher has done up to that point that would warrant possibly removing the child from school. So at that point, we really did start a big push to make sure that people are putting everything into Synergy. So that was a jump in reporting, and like I said, we're continuing to see that. But I think the reduction in the removals from instruction really is your building administrators, because they're the ones that are acting on the referrals and entering those dispositions into Synergy. They really are taking greater strides to try and keep kids in the classroom, because that's been such a big focus for us, especially with the Student Discipline Task Force taking place.
Now, are there any thoughts, and this might be moving forward, because we are going to be one-to-one Chromebooks or devices to students, are there any thoughts about how that might impact some of the options that we have as far as having students remote? If they keep them learning, if you got to a point where you had to have an out-of-school suspension.
Right. So we definitely are planning to expand our alternative when a student is removed. Also, according to new Virginia code, students are required. We are required by law to give students the exact work that is given to them, would have been given to them if they were in school face to face or whatever, if they're suspended, and that work be graded. So we are going to move forward with ways of continuing to keep the students engaged if they are removed from instruction. Now, to speak on as far as the behavior from being virtual, of course, some of the things we anticipated, that's why we built our behavior matrix, and my teammate is going to share some of that stuff with you coming up in her presentation. And we were able to move quickly as a team to address some of those things. And we also provided, as a youth development team and working with our discipline return to learn committee, we developed documents for administrators on how to deal with student behavior while they're in a virtual setting. So that has really helped us overall as a school community to really deal with those challenging student behaviors.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, well, we thank you for that very informative and wonderful presentation, Mr. Ellison, Mr. Ransom. It's great to see the task force and how it has grown and how much progress has been made in just 3 short years. So hats off to you and your team on everything that has been accomplished. It's really, really great to see. All right, that I believe that takes us now to item 5.04, which are Bullying Awareness Month activities. So Dr. Parker, we have a report to that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Our final report of the evening will be every October. It's Bullying Prevention or Bullying Awareness Month. And we have a plethora of activities that we normally plan with students and faculty, and keeping bullying awareness to the forefront of our thoughts. And Mrs. Adams here is to give us an update on the STAND initiatives, which is our branded approach to dealing with bullying awareness in our community and in our schools. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bridget Adams, Youth Development Supervisor, as Dr. Parker mentioned. And as always, it is great to be here once again with you to do what has now become an annual update on the Newport News Public Schools STAND campaign. Each year for the past 4 years now, we've given you an update on our efforts to address bullying across our division. We've learned a lot over the years and continue to expand and evaluate our strategies for promoting positive culture in all of our schools. So tonight I'd like to start with an overview of our bullying data and the strategies we use to prevent bullying and harassing behaviors. As shared in previous updates, empowering student voice and contribution is central to our practice, as is engaging the community through intentional partnerships, which are designed to help us build pro-social skills in our students, or rather the ability to make friends and maintain healthy relationships. As you know, October is always STAND Month. Later, I'll share some updates from our STAND Month activities to demonstrate the collaborative work that is taking place across our division and the community. Just a little history. Since 2016, we have implemented a variety of diverse strategies, not only to drive student behavior, but also to raise awareness and to empower students, families, and staff to work together to improve the culture in our schools. STAND, a division-wide student-led campaign, began as our call to action to challenge students to discourage bullying and harassing behavior, with the full understanding that we really could not do that by ourselves, and that without students leading the work, it would be very difficult to prevent bullying and harassment in our schools. We really believe that in the fight against bullying, the best defense is a strong offense. Our strategies include a tiered system of support for students with an emphasis on clear and consistent norms about behavior and relationships. And recognizing that children don't come hardwired with skills like empathy and compassion, our elementary schools have made kindness a cultural expectation that is embedded in their everyday communication and practices. We've increased opportunities for students to lead at all levels, including our Expect Respect clubs in our middle schools. We've conducted family forums, student assemblies, and professional development for school staff. As we transitioned to a virtual learning environment, it was critically important that we communicated the same positive expectations and norms that would be essential to creating an emotionally safe space for all of our students. Those norms were communicated in a virtual learning behavior matrix, which outlines expectations for maintaining a safe, respectful, and responsible learning environment for all students. This matrix helped to create common language and expectations for all students and staff. It outlines the behaviors that are expected as students enter the classroom, during teacher-led instruction, during group work, and even when they are working independently. These norms are essential to creating a safe learning environment. For example, by not requiring students to turn their cameras on and giving them the choice to keep their video in start mode, we prevent any uneasiness or anxiety a student might have about sharing video of their living space with their peers. The matrix also encourages students to spend the first 5 minutes connecting in the chat function. This is to build community and to create a positive environment before instruction begins. similar to what they might experience as they enter their in-person classroom. Students are also expected to use kind words and faces and to respect others' cultures and opinions. Teachers and students can refer to these norms around being respectful as often as needed to ensure a safe space for learning and to discourage bullying and other negative behaviors. To ensure that all students receive the same information, elementary and secondary principals led virtual learning town hall meetings for students and staff to walk through the virtual learning expectations and to explain why they are important. We do understand that there may be those who deviate from the expectations, and because the National Center for Educational Statistics reported in 2019 that 1 in 5 students reported being bullied, we have established protocols to ensure that students and all stakeholders have a way to report bullying in our school division. In October 2019, with the help of our NNPS Technology Department, we implemented the Safe Schools Alert incident reporting system, which makes it possible for anyone to report bullying, harassment, and other serious concerns 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, via a phone call, web form, email, phone, or text message. Information on the new system was provided to families in the Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, via phone calls, email, and sharing in various social media outlets. In addition, each school received enough posters to hang one in every classroom. To date, there have been 58 reports received to the Safe Schools Alert incident reporting system. Now, this number may seem low, but remember, students often speak with their school staff about difficult situations. We hope that all of the work that we are doing in our schools around relationship building and social emotional learning has made it easier for students to talk to adults in their buildings. Of the reports we did receive, I should point out that some were spam, an issue that we've worked on with the vendor, and for some reports, the report creator did not provide enough information to follow up on the report. However, each report receives a response to confirm receipt of the report and our intent to follow up. Now, every year we show you this, but it's important to revisit this bullying reporting and resolution system. Whenever we receive a report of bullying, our bullying reporting and resolution flow chart provides clarity for all stakeholders on how to process a report of bullying behavior. Whenever a report is received, our practice is that the parent or guardian of all students involved are contacted and an investigation is done. Often, what is reported is a form of conflict that cannot be categorized as bullying. Bullying, by definition, is an offense that is, number 1, aggressive and unwanted, number 2, repeated over time, and number 3, occurs when there is a real or perceived power imbalance, such as height or size, popularity, or socioeconomic status. So we often have to review these characteristics of bullying to help students, parents, and others differentiate what is bullying versus a matter of conflict between students. For example, a student may be teased in class one day by another student, and I'm walking through the flow chart. These students have never had a problem, but one of them goes home and tells his parent that he has been bullied. The parent makes a report. We take the report, investigate, determine if it was bullying, and then the designated school administrator makes a decision about how to proceed. If it's not bullying, the administrator will determine what the necessary step should be to address the conflict, which may or may not result in discipline. If it is bullying, a discipline referral is created, and we follow division policy. If it is a crime, we contact law enforcement. If not, we determine the appropriate action for that situation. Both parents are always included in the effort to resolve the issue. Thereafter, the students are subsequently contacted to ensure that the bullying has been resolved. Before I share our bullying data, I wanted to reiterate that our approach to addressing bullying is holistic, in that it's founded in our commitment to positive youth development, which we define using a simple, memorable equation that positive experiences plus positive relationships plus positive environments working together result in positive youth development. This model helps us to demonstrate to all stakeholders that everyone, including parents, the bus driver, school nutrition worker, everyone plays an important role in the fight against bullying. We asked the village to focus on key areas and to ask important questions like, how are we helping students to build skills such as empathy, cultural competence, and self-regulation? How are we intentionally creating a sense of belonging and providing a safe space for all students? Or setting norms and expectations which would make it likely for students to behave? By focusing on these key areas, we are creating an environment in which bullying and harassment are less likely to occur. So let's take a look at the incidence of bullying recorded in our school division over the past 4 years. This data depicts the number of elementary bullying incidences that have been entered into our student information system each year, using 3 specific codes: bullying, bullying other, or electronic abuse / cyberbullying. As you can see, the number of actual elementary bullying incidences continues to be fewer than 20 per year. During the 2018-2019 school year, we increased our bullying prevention awareness efforts to ensure that students and staff would be able to distinguish bullying from other forms of conflict, hence the increase in reported incidents. I should also point out that the 1920 school year accounts for 119 days of reporting, as Mr. Ellis just previously mentioned. Nevertheless, the data is trending in the right direction. A little more than half, 54% of elementary incidences associated with bullying were attributed to male students and 46% to female students. Should also point out that even though the number of bullying incidences is low, it is important to note that 84% of elementary incidences were attributed to Black or African American students, with white and Hispanic students representing 8% each, respectively, of elementary bullying incidences. Similar to other types of behavior infractions, middle school students have a higher reported incidence of bullying than their elementary peers. It is encouraging to see a decrease in incidence of bullying in the area of electronic abuse, which is where cyberbullying is captured. Yesterday, as a part of STAND Month and our enhanced partnerships with the Newport News Police Department Community Youth Outreach Department, Digital Citizenship Day included a virtual workshop for students in grades 6 through 12, which addressed the dangers of inappropriate use of technology, social media, and digital safety. Master Police Officer Zenz, one of our school resource officers, was interviewed by 2 of our own students who are young adult police commissioners with the Newport News Police Department. With respect to race, Black and African American students represent 61% of bullying incidents in middle school, with incidences for white students at 27.8% and Hispanic or students identifying as 2 or more races at 5.6% respectively. And finally, bullying incidences for our high school students have steadily decreased over the past couple of years. Now, I wouldn't dare stand here and tell you that bullying is not happening in our high schools, but I can confidently state that we are doing everything possible to make reporting easy and resolution an expectation. Just to close this portion out, 3 of the 4 incidences of bullying were attributed to Black or African American students in the 2019-2020 year for high school students. Bullying prevention is our goal, and to accomplish this, we continue to educate students and staff and focus on building essential skills in students like self-management and relationship building. Last year, we partnered with Newport News Public Schools Student Advancement to pilot a social emotional learning curriculum in some of our elementary schools as a bullying prevention initiative. As you heard in an earlier report from Dr. Mitchell, that pilot was successful, resulting in a decrease in negative behaviors among participants. That curriculum is now being implemented in each of our elementary schools. To ensure that we provide the support students need in this virtual learning environment, there is now dedicated time in our elementary and middle school schedules for social emotional learning. Also, we continue to engage students in empowerment programs like Rise and Bloom, which empower them to be accountable for their decisions and to contribute to positive culture in their schools. Last week, Bloom and Flourish, the high school version of Bloom, sponsored an I Am Enough Day for middle and high school students. All Newport News Public Schools middle and high school students had an opportunity to participate in a morning African dance lesson led virtually by students in Uganda. Later on that day, they participated in a self-care social lunchtime webinar led by college students, which stressed the importance of taking care of themselves socially, emotionally, and physically. And last but not least, even our youngest champions, Blossom at an Achievable Dream Academy, raised money to purchase bikes for students in Vietnam to make it easier for them to get to school. So we're trying to encourage our students to focus on the positive and to make sure that they have the skills necessary to be upstanders in our school division. The greatest return we've seen in our efforts to drive positive culture has been in our continual empowerment of student voice. Our students continue to have a seat at the planning and decision-making table in our schools and the division, making a tremendous difference in not only how they see themselves, but how we support them. As you know, members of the Superintendent's Advisory Group on Education provided insight on the dress code policy. Also, each year, the Youth Development Department offers an honors internship to students who provide invaluable guidance to us on how to best serve their peers. Last year, our citywide SEA designed 2 initiatives. One, the Empathy Project to improve teacher-student relationships, which they felt was a priority, and the other, the Student Exchange, which allowed them to spend the day at another school simply to examine the classroom and school culture. Both of these projects gave them a deeper understanding of the work of education. Our students were instrumental in assisting us with developing an alternative graduation plan after our schools closed. With us, the Class of 2020 Task Force waded through the issues and gave us recommendations which really helped us to come up with a workable solution. In search of a way to encourage students after schools close, several students, including Mr. Moody, put together a plan to launch a student-led talk show. They reached out to students in grades K through 12 to participate as reporters, editors, and producers. Over the summer, the Vibe Student Talk Show created short, engaging messages, and shortly after school started, designed and orchestrated a virtual block party to encourage students, teachers, and staff, which included a video compilation of school principals and other staff lip-syncing Ain't No Mountain High Enough for their students. The video has garnered over 30,000 views. Students did that. As you might imagine, with schools closed, it has been challenging to maintain the level of student involvement that we have achieved in the past. But many of our schools have continued to offer creative and meaningful virtual programming for students. One of the reasons we remain committed to student involvement is because we know that students who participate in at least one club, sport, or activity tend to have better grades, fewer days of absence, and discipline challenges. During the 2019-2020 school year, on average, high school students who did not participate in any club, sport, or activity, here identified as a student group, had an average of 0.73 discipline incidences, while a student who participated in at least one student group had a slightly lower average of 0.71 discipline incidences. But for the most involved student, those involved in 2 or more student groups, the average number of discipline incidences dropped to an average of 0.50. This same pattern was evidenced in the number of days of absence a student accrued. As the number of student groups in which a student participated increased, the number of days of absence decreased from 7.28 days of absence for the disconnected student to an average of 5.6 days for students involved in 2 or more clubs. This could mean that students who are connected to the school community are more likely to come to school. But we need to learn more about the students who do not participate. The same is true for academic performance. While this benchmark data looks promising, we understand that there are other factors which contribute to academic achievement. This gives us cause to take a deeper look into this and other data about student involvement. And here also are the numbers for middle school. Middle school data is very similar, with average discipline incidence of days of absence decreasing with student involvement, with the exception of students with 2 or more groups. Not sure what's going on. They've got to dig a little deeper there. And because not all middle school students have a grade point average, that data is not included here. One thing that has been very important to us is to continue the connections we have to the community. NNPS Together is our commitment to stay connected to the village to meet the needs of all of our students. Since schools closed, we have conducted webinars for both students and staff to encourage, inform, and empower. We've established an enhanced partnership matrix with available opportunities offered by our community partners. This matrix is a working document that has been provided to our schools as a resource. We've also worked very closely with the CNU Center for Community Engagement. Out of that partnership, more than 100 college students have volunteered to support virtual programming for our schools in the area of virtual clubs, mentoring, and tutoring. The CNU Presidential Leadership Program is also working closely with us to develop leadership programming for elementary, middle, and high school students. In addition to supporting students, we recently began working with the PTA and various NNPS staff to develop resources and training for parents and families. Finally, we are in the 4th week of our annual Stand Month recognition activities, and I must say that this has been one of the best Stand Months we've ever had, even given our circumstances. A district calendar with activities designed to discourage bullying and harassment and to promote positive culture has guided the development of school-based recognition activities, which encourage participation from students, staff, families, and the community. For example, at the beginning of the month, we had World Day of Bullying Prevention. Thank you for many of you that wore blue. We also had a Celebrate Me activity, which encouraged students and staff to share their heritage to promote cultural competence. We had Get Connected Week, which was a week-long activities designed to inform and connect students with student involvement opportunities at their school. Last Friday, we had NNPS Arts Day, and tomorrow is Unity Day. It's a national recognition event for bullying prevention. And we have an orange, everyone's going to wear orange, but we also have asked that everyone puts an orange heart either in their car window or in their business window to show that they stand with us against bullying for Unity Day. So the calendar and links to resources for students and staff is available on the NNPS bullying prevention page. But there's one particular event as I close that I really want to share. The NNPS Stand Together for Community Day will be on Wednesday, October 28th. It is a division-wide food drive that's going to benefit the Virginia Peninsula Food Bank. If individuals, businesses, or families would like to partner with us for the food drive, they can drop off their non-perishable food items beginning tomorrow, Wednesday 21st, through Wednesday the 28th. And our staff is going to help collect all of those, and the food bank will pick them up on the 28th. So that concludes all of my insights and report on the STAND campaign. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Adams. Questions from the board at this time? All right, well, thank you so much, Ms. Adams, for that
Thank you.
great presentation. And now that moves us on to items 5.05, 5.06, and 5.07, which are your attendance report, membership report, and construction report that were included in your board packets. Board members, are there any questions on those reports at this time? All right, hearing none, then we will move to item 5.08, which are comments by the superintendent. Dr. Parker.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to, be the first to thank our staff for those detailed reports this evening. I know they put in a lot of work behind the scenes in addition to all of the other things going on, so thank you so much for the information. Earlier this evening, we received an update on our instructional plan from our elementary school students, special education and English language learners, and our opportunities for soliciting and gathering feedback from staff in our communities. Yesterday, we launched another communication tool to ensure that our staff is kept apprised of our progress as we plan for a safe return to in-person instruction. We launched yesterday the Return to Learn weekly newsletter, which goes directly to the inboxes of our staff. So far, we've heard positive feedback from that, and hopefully we'll continue to give staff updated information as we move forward. In addition to sharing our progress, we'll spotlight some of our dedicated staff. This week, we featured a science teacher, Shannon Payne, at an Achievable Dream Middle and High School. Also a special education teacher, Ms. Ashley Stanley at General Stanford, and two of our reassigned bus drivers, Lisa Bears and Lou Mahone, who revitalized the courtyard at Palmer Elementary Schools. In each edition, we will also share some of our mitigation strategies and respond to some frequently asked questions. In other news around the division, Newport News Public Schools was awarded a $600,000 Stop School Violence grant from the U.S. Department of Justice to promote safety in our schools and community. The grant is designed to improve our school environment by providing students and teachers with tools they need to recognize, respond to, and help prevent acts of violence. The grant will fund training for staff and students in mental health first aid and also support student-led mental health awareness campaigns. This is also National School Bus Safety Week, and tomorrow is School Bus Transportation Employee Appreciation Day. So thank you for all of our bus safety folks and transportation folks. If you're on this viewing in this evening, we appreciate you for all that you do. Many of our bus drivers and assistants are supporting students and staff in various other roles while we're in virtual instruction. We salute you and our mechanics, trainers, and dispatch staff. Thank you for all your continued service. And once again, Newport News Public Schools has earned the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for our comprehensive annual report for fiscal year 2019. Presented by the Government Finance Officers Association, the award is considered the highest recognition in government accounting and financial reporting. Congratulations to our business office accounting team, led by Mr. Steve Cannell, for this recognition. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell our students and families that you are off on Tuesday, November 3rd. There will be no instruction. It's a teacher work day and election day. So please remember to vote. And that concludes my remarks for this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Dr. Parker. That'll move us to item 6, another opportunity to hear from the public. Are there any cards? Are there any cards? Seeing no cards at this time, then in the interest of time, we will go ahead and adjourn for the evening. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I hope you all stay healthy, and we will see you again November the 17th.